Welcome to Terrific Talk. My name is Tom Anderson. Tom Anderson.
Play to win the game. Gone.
Tom Anderson.
Great cash, homie. Great cash, homie.
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown!
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown!
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Sound going crazy.
Terrific Talk Podcast. Welcome back, Terrific Talk Podcast.
Here comes the hoe!
I'm your host, Tom Anderson.
First, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Welcome to Terrific Talk. I'm your host, Tom Anderson. Beautiful Thursday from the Terrific Studios in Hoboken, New Jersey. Thank you for checking the podcast out, whether you're listening via iTunes, YouTube, or on my website, TommyTerrificSports.wordpress.com. Great to be with you. Really pumped about today's podcast. I'm joined by the very talented Leigh Ellis. Leigh, of course, one of the shining stars on NBA TV's popular show, The Starters. Now, The Starters, which used to be the Basketball Jones podcast, really popular. It's one of my favorite shows on TV right now. You've got four guys, four fans of the NBA, not too different from myself, talking hoops, and they're having a blast doing it. So let's get into it. Let me bring in the international man of mystery, Leigh Ellis. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me. My pleasure.
Definitely want to get into your story and how you ended up at the Starters. But before we get into all that, I've got a question for you. So you're playing pickup basketball. You're playing 2-on-2. Which one of your fellow Starters co-stars do you choose as your teammate? Skeets, Tass, or Trey?
Well, Skeets is definitely the best player. He's the quickest. So I'd definitely go with Skeets.
Going with Skeets. Okay, so I had Skeets on the podcast a couple months ago, and I asked him the same question. He took Trey. What's that all about?
Well, I think he wants the big guy, which is obviously that's key there. You know, you got Trey who's like 6'5", so he kind of towers over everybody else. He's got a good low post game. So that's understandable, I think.
You got the 3-ball though, Leigh.
Yeah, well, I have probably got a little bit more range on my shot than Trey, but he's got the size and the body down low that he can sort of, he's taller than everyone else, so he's got the advantage there. I guess it's what you're looking for really, if you want size or if you want someone who maybe can shoot a little bit better. But Trey can step outside and knock down the long ball as well, so it doesn't really matter, I don't think.
All right, so you've got a really cool story. You were born and raised in Australia. Growing up in the 80s, this was pre-Dream Team. I got to assume the NBA wasn't too big in Australia. Where did your love for the NBA come from?
Well, it wasn't big as far as coverage goes, that's for sure, because we didn't have the internet and cable TV back then. But my story actually began with the 1987 NBA All-Star Game. My brother got hold of a copy of that game from a friend of his. And basketball has always been big in Australia. A lot of people play it, but you just couldn't sit there and watch the games like you can now with, basically if you're in Australia, you can watch the same feed, ESPN or TNT or whatever it is, broadcast out. But back then that wasn't the case. So my brother got hold of this tape and I watched it and immediately fell in love, even more so with the NBA. I already knew about Dr. J and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, but actually seeing these guys play was really just a dream come true for someone like me. And also with that game, it's famous because Rolando Blackman hits 2 free throws as time has expired to send the game into overtime, and then the West go on to win it. And Tom Chambers, of course, was an injury replacement. The local guy playing for the Seattle Supersonics, he comes into the team, starts in the game, and ends up with the MVP. So if you were to ever sell the game of NBA basketball to anyone, especially a kid, you basically couldn't come up with a better story than that game. It had Hakeem Olajuwon, Moses Malone, Magic, Michael. It had all these great players that were sort of world famous even back then, all playing together on the most, the biggest stage, and then you have the most dramatic finish, and then you have the hometown guy winning the MVP. So from there, I just started getting my hands on any magazine I could, and started reading up on everything, and I started writing for the NBA teams, and they used to send me out stuff, and it was just, you imagine what it's like when you're 12 or 13 years old and your heroes actually acknowledge your mail and then send stuff to you. It's just incredible. And then in the late 80s, I think it was 88-89 season, one of the channels in Australia actually started showing games, not live, but was like, usually it was about a month after the game had happened, where it was on the worst time. It was like Friday night and midnight, the game was put. So I started taping those games, and I just built up my catalogue and started watching them over and over and over again, and just slowly then more coverage started coming out to Australia. Another channel picked up NBA Action, so we started getting NBA Action and Inside Stuff. The from the very sort of early stages of NBA basketball coverage in Australia, I really just jumped on it from the start. And, it's like anything. You just kind of get so sort of obsessed with it, I guess, that you just start absorbing all the information you can. And anything I could get my hands on, I treated like gold. It even got to the point where a friend of mine, his dad used to work at the airlines, at Qantas it was, and he did something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he used to get the USA Today newspapers from the flights in from America. And I used to actually, it's crazy to think of it now, I used to pay my friend for these free newspapers that his dad got so I could read the box scores and the little game wraps in USA, recaps in USA Today. So
wow, dedication.
That's where it all began for me.
So was your dream always to cover the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, back then, you don't sort of think about it. I guess you think you're going to play in the NBA when you're 12 years old. You don't really think you're going to become a broadcaster. But it was always my dream to be in the NBA, and I used to play basketball a lot, and I was okay at it, but I knew fairly early on that I wasn't going to make it in the NBA, and Dad sort of said to me as well, it's great to have a dream of wanting to play there, but you've got to realise, I was a tiny little kid, and I was coming deepest off the bench in my high school team, and the guys who were playing were much better than me. So I sort of figured early on, okay, well, I'm not going to be playing in the NBA, but I feel very proud to say now that I am in the NBA. It's just not in the way that I originally thought, but it's the second best place I could be, and that's as a broadcaster.
So before you moved to Toronto, I think you were about 29 years old. You met the Basketball Jones guys, really got the ball moving. You lived in London for a little bit. What were you doing there?
Yeah, well, my mother is actually from London, so I have a permanent visa in London. So yeah, I lived there for like 6 years. I left Melbourne when I was 22, just because Melbourne is a great place. Australia is a great country to live in, but I always thought there's something more out there, and I wanted to explore different areas. And so I went to London, as many Australians do, and I just sort of settled in there. Originally I was working in a hotel, just in the sort of lobby bar there, just pouring drinks and telling everyone I was a barman, but I was really not. and then I got a little bit more serious. I started working for JP Morgan actually over in London in the bank, not doing a whole lot, but I managed to sort of talk my way into a job there and sort of puff my resume up a little bit, made me sound like I was pretty important, and I managed to sneak in the door there. And that was what I was doing there. And then I came to Toronto when I was about 29, I think it was. And
why'd you go to Toronto?
Originally my plan for Toronto, I only had a 1-year working visa because that was the arrangement between Australia and Canada. That's all I was entitled for. And so I thought I'll just go to Canada for a year and hang out there and see what happens. And then I was only in Toronto for a few months, or probably even a few weeks. I can't quite remember. And I met a girl, Roxana, who turned out to be my wife and the mother of our son now. So
wow.
So I can't claim to anybody that I planned everything to go the way it has. It's more kind of just the way life unfolds. So we got married in Toronto, and we started living there, and I started working at the Score, which is an independent sports television network in Toronto. And just after I started working there, the Basketball Jones, who I knew because I sort of knew who Spitz was through whose Ball Don't Lie. I knew he wrote for them, but the funny thing was I didn't know he was a Toronto guy. I thought he was some big hotshot out of New York or LA or someone like that. He used to write the Ball Don't Lie blog, and I just kind of assumed it was an American guy. And then I heard that they were joining the Score, and once they joined the Score, I mean, I was pretty determined to sort of start working with them and start connecting with them, and so we did a couple of things, but my real break came ironically during the strike of 2011, because those guys needed something to do, and there was no basketball to cover, and so they went on the No Season Required tour, which was a podcast tour around the USA through 9 cities. And at that stage, there was the 5 of them. There was Skeets, Cass, Trey, JD, and Matt. And basically, they needed someone to carry their bags and get their coffees in the morning, and they offered that role to me. And I said,
nice.
I said, absolutely. 5 weeks on the road, I'll do whatever you guys want me to do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, during that, just towards the end of that, the NBA announced they were coming back on Christmas Day. And once we got back from the tour, we had a week or so break, and then we sort of got into it. And I've been now full-time, as the Basketball Jones has started ever since.
The Basketball Jones, one of the most popular podcasts ever. Why was it so successful? What do you think makes a good podcast?
I think with a podcast is, a lot of people think you just sort of have to turn on the microphones and start talking, but what I really was impressed by, especially when these guys joined the Score, was how much preparation into it. And it really is. I mean, people actually compliment us by saying it sounds like you guys just turn up with four friends talking about basketball, and that is a compliment to us.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't reflect how much work goes into every show. And it really is, we never claim to have been pro basketballers, or NBA players or anything like that. But we've all watched and followed the game closely, and we all try to make sure that, the points we're making are accurate and a fair reflection of what we've watched, but also just our own beliefs in what's going on. I mean, everyone's got an opinion and everyone's got a sort of way that they think something's going to happen, and we try to do that, but we also try to have some stats or facts behind it, rather than just sort of getting up there and just ranting about, this guy or that team or whatever it is. So it really is for me, the whole thing about the Basketball Jones podcast originally, why it became successful, I think, was because people related to that part of it. And also there were things like the pick and pay up, where you still see that's carried over to the starters now, where Skeets and Tass have their monthly sort of battle, and at the end of it someone has to do something embarrassing. And, we're not afraid to laugh at ourselves and make ourselves look a bit foolish, all in the name of trying to have a bit of good fun. And just, I asked Skeets about that as well. I remember once in the early days, and I said to him, like, what do you think it was? And his attitude was like, there's so much sports TV out there, but we think we can do a better job of it. And so they went out and did it. And we get some tweets and emails now from people who say, you guys suck, I could do your job. And we're like, yeah, you could. Well, go out and do it. I think some people think that there's like, those who aren't familiar with the background of the Basketball Jones and only know the starters, I think they think the NBA went out and cast 4 people and tried to create this show.
Yeah.
When that's not how it works. I mean, it's organically grown from within, and it's evolved over time, and that's why as well I think now we're still having the success we are, because there's nothing sort of made up about it. It's all genuine, it's all real, and we all just love basketball and we love doing what we do.
Yeah, chemistry is such an important thing, especially with a show like yours, and you guys you're always having fun, you're always laughing, you can make fun of each other, you're always comfortable. And I think that makes people enjoy watching you guys. It's just kind of like a family outside of your own family.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, every sort of group of friends has that own dynamic, You can sort of rip on one guy for this, and you can rip on one guy for that. You can't ever just fake that. And that's the thing with our show. Like, we certainly all make fun of each other for various things, but none of it's sort of nasty, or none of it's just sort of made up to try to make the show funnier or more appealing to our fans. It's all about just, this is who we are. This is 4 guys, as any 4 group of guys do. And I mean, when I say 4, it's really 6, of course, with Matt and JD.
Right.
Obviously, they're behind the scenes as far as on the camera and off the camera goes. But it's the same in the production meetings every morning. If some guy does something, or we sort of rip on him or whatever, but then you move on with the show. It's never anything like, let's try to set up a joke today that makes this guy, that we make fun of this guy. It kind of just happens, and I think that's always the best. I think if you try to plan for laughs, it's never as funny as just what happens naturally.
Yeah. So you're living in Toronto, where you met your wife. The NBA calls around 2013. They want to move your show to NBA TV. Obviously a big deal. But you had a family up in Toronto, and they asked you to move to Atlanta. So it's a huge opportunity, but can you talk about that decision, moving your family? Was that hard for you?
Very hard, yeah. Especially with a young son who was only I think 16 to 18.